Hi, ever wonder what it's like to work another profession or live in the underworld? Listen to unsuspecting riders give a 10 to 15 minute personal masterclass as I spontaneously interview them as they enter my taxi. I'm your host, Simon Rushton, and this is Taxi Chronicles. Morning. Yes, we're back with another episode, another rider. Today we're honoured to have Ian Wilson with us. He is an expert in media law. Yes, I did clock he was a lawyer by looking at his shoes, his nice, tidy, clean shoes. Yeah. And he's just going to share his gift in that nice manner about his industry and what it has to offer. So nice to have you here today, Ian.
Good morning.
First question, easy question. What kind of child were you when you were at school?
I think I was a fairly creative child, and I particularly enjoyed primary school, and I was more interested in history and topics about the Romans, the Egyptians, and dinosaurs, and creative writing. I think those were my passions. And as I got older, when I was a teenager, probably not as well behaved as I should have been, often in trouble with the teachers for not fulfilling my potential. But fortunately, I put the work in before my final exams, so got away with it.
Okay, so you had your fun, you did the naughty, and you made it. What age did you realise you wanted to be a lawyer?
It wasn't until I was in my early 20s. It never been something I particularly thought about when I was younger. I'd moved to London and I was temping whilst I was interviewing for jobs in politics. I'd done a politics degree. And so I was sort of temping just to pay the rent, working as a paralegal at law firms. Mm-hmm. And watching the job and helping got me into it and got me interested in it. And I did a correspondence course to convert my degree over 2 years, and then an evening course at the College of Law, the University of Law it's now called, in Store Street in London. So I learned, sort of got the idea for it on the job, so to speak.
For the listeners, what is a paralegal? You hear about that in the movies and the TV soaps.
A paralegal isn't a qualification. It's simply someone who works at a law firm, an unqualified member of staff who provides assistance and support. So they might be working on the background of a case, and the work they do can vary from fairly mundane tasks like preparing bundles or taking notes in a meeting, through to reviewing documents, preparing witness statements, interviewing clients and so on. It's an excellent way, the best way probably, to get into law, because you have an opportunity to showcase your talents to potential employers, and the talent tends to shine, and then paralegals will be trusted with more involved tasks, and then they have an opportunity to qualify as a solicitor or a barrister after that.
Talking about getting into the industry, I interviewed a paramedic the other day, and he pointed out that it can either cost you 50 grand to do the course, or you can do a course work experience wise, and they pay you and it doesn't cost you anything. Is there a route that you can become a lawyer and it doesn't cost you the earth?
Yes, I mean, it can be the same in law, and indeed that's the route I took, having starting working at a law firm without any legal qualifications. I mean, I did have a politics degree, but no legal qualifications. I was lucky enough that my firm agreed to sponsor me, put me through 4 years of law school, which in today's money would probably be approaching £40,000-50,000. And obviously training, getting the qualification whilst you're earning money meets your accommodation costs and living costs and so on. So yes, that is one way of doing it. And there is an oversupply of law students, and one view is that it's safer to do it that way and try and seek sponsorship rather than racking up mountains of debt, not knowing whether there's going to be a job for you at the end of it.
Okay. So there's oversupply of law students. Why is that? And there's always lots of criminal cases. Or are they all trying to be corporate lawyers?
I think, unfortunately, there's a perception that lawyers earn a lot of money, and whilst it's true, a handful, or quite a few of them at the top, do earn a decent wage. There are a limited number of jobs, and many areas of law don't pay particularly well. Criminal law being one of them, where most clients are on a legal aid certificate, and therefore the hourly rates a lawyer might get paid maybe £20-30 an hour, compared to up to £1,000 an hour for a corporate lawyer. So a roundabout way of saying, a lot of people, I think, they have this perception of lawyers, perhaps from TV or media, that it's a good job to go into because you earn a lot of money. And they sign up to law courses, and there's no real restriction on the number of people who can, in any year, who can sit and read for a law degree or a conversion course or a legal practice course. If you can pay, generally speaking, you can get onto the course. So there's no limit on the number of graduates coming into the legal profession. You can contrast that with medicine, where only a limited number of universities offer medical degrees and require very high grades. There are less barriers of entry onto a law course, and so what we see is a massive oversupply of law graduates chasing a limited number of jobs, and sadly a lot of them are saddled with debt.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Has there ever been a time when you felt this industry wasn't for you?
I think yes. It's like a lot of jobs. It can be, you can have a love-hate relationship with it. You can have cases that aren't going your client's way, or you can have a client you don't particularly sympathise with, and you can at times lose your passion for the job, but nearly always that will be short-lived, because one of the great things about being a lawyer, particularly the kind of law I do, is that no two cases are alike, and you'll have a collection of different clients, different backgrounds, and you're learning about different areas of life, and that will normally revitalise things.
You spoke about the clients. What's a typical client issue in the law you do? It's media law.
Yes, so media law, it's called media and communications law these days, and that is really about protecting individuals' reputation, their privacy rights, their data protection rights, and more commonly these days, protecting them from harassment via the internet or other online avenues, such as electronic messaging, social media, and so on. And so in academic terms, the areas of law that I practice are defamation, which is libel or slander, privacy law, and data protection law.
It kind of fascinates me. I was speaking to you earlier about the Hulk Hogan case, where he actually slept with his friend's wife, but they were swingers.
Right.
So the friend's wife and the man were like, oh, I like to watch people having sex with my wife and that kind of thing. And he filmed it, and then the friend's wife, with a friend, he put it on. I think he gave it to someone, and they put it on a platform, social media platform. That was a big hooray, and Hulk Hogan wasn't happy about it. But you should have seen it coming. If this man likes to film people, yeah, you should have seen that coming. But the argument was in this documentary that there's a line where, because he was backed by a billionaire who actually who was exposed a sexual case as well, or in some nation like that. And the idea was that there's certain things the press are not allowed to promote, or shouldn't be able to expose. Those, I suppose, what I'm getting at here, your cases can make a precedent for law.
Yeah.
Do you ever have some morality and think, I'm meant to represent this client, but I really don't agree with what he's trying to do? And if so, how do you deal with that?
Well, I wouldn't consider it in terms of morality. You can have cases where you might be arguing a position that personally you don't agree with, but what trumps all of this is, the right to legal representation, the right to fair trial, and the particular kind of work I do. It might be the right to freedom of expression. So if I'm defending someone defamation or a privacy case, I might not agree with them, but I might, it doesn't mean they shouldn't have the right to have their views, to be able to air their views. Depending on the circumstances, there are limits to that. For instance, with anti-Semitism, racism, and so on.
Okay. A couple of last questions. What's the impact you want to have on the world?
Well, it's nice to, as you touched on, it's nice to create legal precedent and to be involved in cases that make a positive societal difference. One of the biggest cases I've been involved in was against Google, and that concerned Google's liability for information published on their platforms. And that's something I feel strongly about, that social media platforms should bear some responsibility for the great power they have. So that was a case in which I was able to help establish a precedent which can hopefully make a difference and be positive. But you don't know what cases are going to come up and which cases are going to come up, and it's interesting to spot issues and discover issues, and it's not always obvious at first how important and widespread an issue may be. So yeah.
Okay. That's interesting when you said the Google case, because I'm, as a podcaster, YouTube have suspended my account on 2 occasions.
Oh dear.
We had a conversation about COVID. It wasn't saying COVID wasn't real, it wasn't anything like that. They just said, basically, in short, you can't talk about COVID. Which I kind of looked at like, well, why have a platform if you're telling people what they can and cannot talk about? Is something freedom of speech. So it was a mixed feeling, in the sense of, it's like a China regime. Do you see what I mean? When people say, well, you can talk about this, you can't talk about that, blah blah blah. But in the same sense, someone looked at it and said, well, that's their house, so you arrange the furniture in your house how you want to. It was I don't talk about COVID anymore. Gonna like that, but I'm not really happy with them. But I suppose it's better the devil than no.
It's very difficult. I mean, when I started this area of law 20 years ago, and these companies aren't that old. I mean, Facebook didn't wasn't around until 2005, 2006, and Google is only 20 years old or so, maybe a little older, and their starting point was very much we don't shoot the messenger, we don't want to get involved.
I agree with that.
And the case I was talking about, related to defamation on Google, and our point was that, well, you are giving someone a platform to cause harm to other people, and you should be equally culpable, or culpable to some degree. And I do stand by that. And there are arguments by analogy with gun control, and you can say, well, guns don't hurt people, people hurt people. But if you take the guns out of the equation, that could work. Google, YouTube, these companies have been a force for great progress and good and education. So I don't subscribe to the argument that they're all evil. We all use, or most of us use these platforms every day to our benefit. I do have some sympathy for Google and Twitter and so on, platform and Facebook, where they've come under political pressure to intervene in hate speech, and we saw it last year or earlier this year with former President Trump. And in a way, they're damned if they do, they're damned if they don't. And on the COVID issue, I think that's, I mentioned when I was talking about freedom of expression earlier. I don't subscribe to the American model where free speech trumps everything and it should be constitutionally protected. I do think that should be certain restrictions on free speech, and that might include citing racial hatred, or indeed promoting pseudoscience and false medical information, which is likely to cause societal harm and put lives at risk. So it's difficult, and where does one draw the line? But in a way, my sympathy isn't non-ending, because these companies have decided to go into this arena, and in a sense they've had the role of judge, jury and executioner for something that comes with the territory.
The government doesn't want to make the law or enforce anything, so they put the pressure on the company.
Yes. Yeah, so as a lawyer, and we deal with Google and platforms all the time, trying to get them to remove content from their website, and if they refuse, there is a sense of frustration that they have this power, and there is a feeling they should exercise it responsibly. But in a way, that can make people like Mark Zuckerberg and Jack Dorsey more powerful than elected politicians.
Yeah, but then at the same time, you could get someone like ourselves who would say, well, we feel that you should take down all the stuff about Bill Gates trying to help people, because in retrospect, there's some bad things about it. Do you see what I mean? People could argue the things both ways, but the things are only happening in one way, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, sorry, I don't quite follow.
Okay. I was using hypothetically example. Let's say someone like Bill Gates has done something bad, or right, let's forget him as a name.
Okay.
But the government's trying to promote that. Yeah.
Promote that
that someone's good, but really, if you look at their track record, let's take Khan. Yeah. So
Khan. Okay.
Yeah. They're putting out all this stuff about how he's really good or what he's doing, but then as a taxi driver,
who's putting it out? The Labour Party.
No, yeah, the Labour Party, or it's on social media. So they're putting out, but we know that's not true. We know he's caused lots of problems for London as a city. Do you understand? Well,
I'm not going to comment on who I'm voting for, but different.
I'm not voting for him.
I'm not going to say I'm not voting for him, but or the Tory candidate. But different people have different views,
That's
and
that's what I'm getting at. So when one people are saying this, it's not, because you've got to have to me, you've got to have the accountability on the person, not necessarily the organisation. because I can hear something, whether it's racial, sexual, or whatever, and I don't agree with that. I'm not watching it. I'm turning it off. I'm not watching that channel anymore.
So you advocate the view that if you don't like what is being broadcast, just switch it off, and don't blame the TV company or YouTube or whatever.
I think as long as they're not telling a straight out lie.
What about
that person can slander them.
What about anti-vaccination propaganda that people buy into and believe?
I think with that, actually, I think like this. You've got to look at, the government hasn't had a debate about it. They just push things under the carpet. And because they're not having a debate about it, that those people, they're going to carry on talking. If you want people not to believe in something, you don't do what China does and just put the thumb on them. You say, okay, well, what's your problem? Why do you believe that? Okay, do you know this? Do you know that? Do you understand? But that's where the issues are coming from. It's coming from the government not being transparent, as they're not in many cases.
But specifically in relation to people putting out misinformation about vaccines.
Well, right.
Should the social media companies not try and stop that?
No. Because people have the ability to say, I don't agree with that, or actually, I've got blood clots as well that have formed since I've taken this. And then that's how something. Remember, stuff doesn't start from the government; it starts from below, and the government it becomes an issue, and then the government should address that, looking out for the people's interests. But the government's trying to say no, everybody must be on this thing, and it must be agreeing in this, that, and we're good.
But there's no political opposition. There's no political party that's saying that the vaccines aren't safe, and there are no credible scientists who are saying the vaccines aren't.
Well, yeah, so, that's debatable. That's what I hear what you're saying, and I don't want to get into the COVID thing because
I think we're
just go to waste.
I think we're straying, but
yeah, I know we're straying. Yeah, but I hear what you're saying. From my own
well, let's try a less controversial example. Say there was a podcaster promoting paedophilia, saying it's okay to sleep with children. I mean that
no.
Shouldn't YouTube switch those off? Yeah. So
you got me there. You got me. I'm a father of kids. Yeah, you got me there.
So we agree. There's a line. It's a question of where it's drawn.
Yeah, thank you. There's a line, and that's it. The person who made that podcast, to me, the capital punishment is coming in very quickly for them.
Yes. I'm
a believer in capital punishment when it comes to those kind of things. That's one thing I don't tolerate.
But I mean, just to play devil's advocate a bit, if that anti-vaccine propaganda takes off and is believed, and we have a less inoculated population, hundreds of thousands of people will probably die. We're seeing what's happening in India at the moment. Unfortunately, because we've done so well with the vaccine program here, deaths are very low now, and hopefully the situation will remain like that. So I appreciate paedophilia is a more emotive subject, but there will always be a debate about at what point is censorship justified.
I've had many conversation, informative conversation, as in I've been taught by doctors who've been in the car, and like I said, I'm not going to get into the whole CD conversation because it will waste the thing, but what they are saying basically is that most people who die above 81, and the life expectancy in the country was 76. Yeah.
I think it's 80. But,
okay, but even if so above 80, and they always have underlying sicknesses. So they said the measures that we're taking are unreasonable. Now, these is not me with my layman's self. These are the professionals talking. But this has been a great interview. It's been a very, very good interview, very informative. Would you encourage people to get into media law?
I think that's a very good question. I think I think anyone who's thinking about getting into law, whether it's media law or any other area of law, they need to think about two things. Firstly, the career progression, their salary expectations, and secondly, whether they're going to enjoy doing what's involved. If you're going into law just to earn big bucks, it may not work out well. It's very demanding. The areas of law that pay the most often aren't the most interesting areas of law, without disparaging fellow professionals, but tax law might not be for everyone. Arguing about EU treaties or procurement contracts may not float your boat. The area of law that seems to interest the most people is criminal law. Criminal law doesn't pay well at all, because most of it's on legal aid. Media law, happily somewhere in the middle. But the key thing is it's very demanding, it's very competitive, it's very stressful. In litigation, you are fighting your client's case every day. You'll have a number of clients, and if you make a mistake, you're going to be caught out. So you need to be good at what you do. You need to enjoy the academic side of it, the intellectual, rigor to it. And if you don't have an appetite for that, then it's not for you. I think.
Is it one of those jobs that's long hours and you always have to work overtime?
It doesn't have to be, but often it is. I mean, certainly at the corporate end, the city end, that tends to be the way. In media law at my firm, I think we've got a nice balance, but certainly when I was younger, when I was training in a junior lawyer, I worked very long hours, because you have to stand out. You have to make a difference. You have to, show your superiors that you're capable of doing tougher tasks and so on. Yeah, and I came in as a paralegal, and so there might be more structured programs now where you don't have to work all hours, God sends. But I was finding time to do work that went slightly beyond my remit to try and push for a lawyer's job, and that worked. I was very much believed that you sort of have to extend, you have to create your own destiny, and you have to fight your own cause. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of law graduates come out of university and they're stuck in this education mode where they think their career is going to be laid out for them and they're going to be told what to do. To an extent, you have to fight your own corner and create a role for yourself and prove yourself. But yeah, the question of hours is always a controversial one. I'm happy to say most people at my firm, I think everyone at my firm now has a very good work-life balance, because it's important. If you work silly hours, you will burn out, you will get sick, and that's no good for you or your firm.
Okay. Well, thanks a lot.
It's been an absolute pleasure.
Much appreciated. And we wish you well.
What a lovely journey to work.
We hope you liked that interview. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to get the latest daily episode. Ever considered investing in the continent with the fastest growing economy and population on Earth? The same continent that holds 30% of the world's known natural resources? Then listen to our sister podcast, Africa Investor Stories, where you will hear real investors with real stories from around the world share their experience of investing in Africa. We post Monday and Thursday at 10 a.m.